me some questions that they wanted me to talk about, and I'll quickly go on to them because some of the subject matters we could spend a half hour on their own. So I'll give you my quick thought, the things that I want to cover, and then I'll take questions from you. So just jot your questions down and we'll get back to it. The first one I was asked about increased voter access. You know, this was implemented many years ago in the state of Arizona when we did the motor vehicle law. 75% of the voter registration forms that we get in actually come through Service Arizona, which is the Arizona Department of Transportation. One of the most questions that we get is they come in electronically in a voter registration form. We can tell in our office because they're assigned a number, and it starts with the year and goes on. We can tell if it's an online or through a clerk at a motor vehicle office, because it'll be coded at the end with a I, stands for internet, M means motor vehicle office. So when we get a complaint from a voter, especially on if we spelled their name wrong or they didn't mark the party thing, we know if it's the online or motor vehicle, because if any of you used the online service, you have to select, you know, which political party they were. If it's through the motor vehicle office, we will request for motor vehicle the actual form that the applicant filled out to see if they made a political party choice. Because how many of you recently, last couple of years, been to the motor vehicle office to fill out that form? Okay, that form has got so much stuff on it. You know, we're in between the organ donors, and down below it's civil service. You know, there's just too much form. So we are trying to work with motor vehicle on straightening it out. Because we understand that the last thing people are, when they go into a motor vehicle office, are thinking about is registering to vote. You're dealing with the driver's license issue. But those things are being resolved as we move through. The other question I was asked to talk about was face voter fraud. The word voter fraud is becoming a buzzword. You know, it's just like when Prop 200, remember when we had to do proof of citizenship? The statement was, well, we have all these illegal voters. And I said, give me one name. And then it's just ramble, nothing. And I did this, I can't remember. It was a representative from the Green Valley, I can't remember his name, he's a pro golfer. He was on a talk. You got it. He was on a talk show, and I had enough of his stuff. So I called in, and I said, as an elected official, you have a fiduciary responsibility to inform me. I says, give me one name, sir. I'm waiting. It was dead air. The next day, he was in my office, because I embarrassed him, saying, you give me your names. I says, I didn't say I had names. You said you had thousands. Name you one, and I'll start the investigation. So voter fraud is now becoming a buzzword. What does this mean to each individual? It means something different. You know, each election, a small number of voters attempt to vote twice. We know that. We have processes in place to stop these votes from counting. Our systems are designed that only one ballot will count if you're voting by mail or if you attempt to go to a polling location. We send all these forms over to the Pima County Attorney's Office for further investigation. And I will tell you, most of them are elderly people that forget they mailed a ballot, they hear about election day. You know, a son knew the daughter got the ballot or has the ballot going to their house, goes and votes mom's ballot, then the other kid that lives in town didn't talk. So we get into these kind of mazes. It's younger people that we're going aggressively after. We also have what we call the CrossState Match, where we'll be able to identify with other states that people have tried to attempt to vote twice. We were able to successfully convict somebody here in the Green Valley area that voted here and also voted in Kansas. So it depends on which state where they end up at, who is going to be the lead prosecutor or attorney. So we're going through that process right now for the 2016 election. And the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is also Okay, I jumped ahead here. The other topic was fake news. Oh boy, fake news. Another buzzword, you know. If you can't defend it, can't quantify where you get the information, throw the word fake news and it's a godsend. My thought of fake news is there's too much information to process these days. You can Google anything and come up with amazing information. Many people are only pulling information from like-minded sources. Sometimes these sources are fake or they pull information that is skewed information. If you don't research the source and dig into the real data behind the story, you may be getting misleading information. For example, if you survey 1,000 people on gun control, which is a hot topic, in Berkeley, California, and 1,000 people in Dallas, Texas, you will have different results. This is the issue with statistics, and many reports will come out that neglect to tell you where they have the information is coming from. This is why I always tell people to don't pay attention to, they polled 500 people nationwide, okay? Well, depending on where you live, what they think over there. I can tell you right now, dealing with elected officials that are either Democrat or Republican from Pima County think differently in Maricopa County, belonging to the same political party. And we're all in the same state. So that's another issue of concern. So I do not like when they go, this candidate's leading, this candidate, because it sways the way people think that, oh, my vote doesn't count, I don't do this, and you know. So I hate polling. You know, polling is only good for the people that are getting paid to do this. And I won't even go to the talking heads that are just talking, you know, that are making way too much money. Let me talk about something that is a serious concern, hacking of voter data. This successful hacking occurred in another state and not in Arizona. There was an attempt in another county, but it was not successful. I have taken additional steps to secure our voter registration data and also hired somebody who specializes in cybersecurity to test our system and offer improvements. Our security levels and our data is safe. Nevertheless, we are always on the alert for any attempted hacks. We regularly evaluate our process and procedures to ensure that our safety measures are up to date. We cannot provide detail of our security measures since that would give a roadmap to hackers as what to expect. Now, with that said, you know, the mind thought process in any place where we keep data. We all heard what just recently happened that concerns all of us if you have a mortgage. It's not if they are, it's when they are. So that's why you always have to be on the alert. Fire things. You know, our firewalls, password protections, and everything. Because we all heard of it. It started with Target, and then it was Chipotle, and then it just goes on and on and on. I am having a major discussion with, and a disagreement with the Secretary of State on the current well, there's multiple disagreements I have. Because they want to put our voter data on the cloud. And I said, no, our voter data does not belong on the cloud. I don't know who, you know, a cloud, I tell people, they go, what's a cloud? You know, we all know, we go outside, we look up, there's a cloud, you know, but that's not what it means in computer technology. It's like a huge football stadium with massive servers and rows with voter data. It is only good as protected as the employees you hire to protect it, because it's what they do. My employees work for me. I know who has it, and we can control that. We have our own server, so we're on a massive disagreement on. They say it's cheaper. Now let me tell you, in computer technology, when we first had servers, they were expensive, right? They're not that expensive anymore. Computers are not even expensive. You used to go get it fixed. Now you just dump it and go get a new one, you know? Also, because we do have a statewide voter registration system database because of the Help America Vote Act, Maricopa and Pima County have our own independent systems where we have our own IT staff that work directly for us. Some of you have heard, or maybe not, the Secretary of State wanted Maricopa and Pima County to give it up and go put it on her, and we said not just no, but hell no. We can, when I want to change in my voter registration system, I go to my IT and say, okay, this is what I want you to do. Take me how to get there. With the statewide system, you got to go hire a consultant and see who's there, and they'll put the damn ticket in, and you know, and you're just another thing as a client base, and you're constantly feeding them. The contracts are amazing. Right now, our statewide system costs us $850,000 a year for maintenance. My IT staff is not even that much, you know, and neither is Maricopa County's. But that's how contractors work in big companies, But I will tell you, we all have to be on the statewide database. The 13 counties are right into the system. Maricopa and Pima County, we poured up through what they call a poller. We key in our information here. At night, we run the report so we can meet the HAVA requirements. The Secretary of State recently has initiated an additional security level because of the attempt from one of the other 13 counties to get into the system, where only certain county staff can have access to the statewide voter system in each county. So each person who is allowed access has been issued 2 separate passwords and a token. A token is like a little key thing, you know, that we sign to staff, we secure it, and there's only 2 PCs, they have to be in PCs, where they can log in with the 2 passwords. They have to have a token to give them access into the statewide system. So that's how it's working in Maricopa and Pima County, and the other 13 counties have to follow a similar path. I do not have access, and I don't have a token, because I don't do the work to get into the statewide database, unless I want to become nosy Rosie and look somebody up. The other question that was asked is rigged elections. You know, every state has different state laws that we're governed. There's certain ones that we're governed to by federal that usually deal with massively of military overseas voters and things of that nature, okay, and are reporting. So the state of Arizona, I'm very familiar on our election process, and because of our multiple checks and balances, you know, unless you're going to have a poll worker who sees that a person has been issued an early ballot, and the individual is a type A person, like argues with them and doesn't want to stand up to them, and it gives them a ballot, and we already have it counting. But we'll catch it as we're finishing the end process, and we'll send those to the county attorney's office. So we feel we have very good state. One of my big disagreement is in the procedures manual that I'm dealing with Eric Spencer, and every other county is now backing me up, is how he wants to handle military overseas. We already filed, another county took the initiative, I didn't have to be the lead one, to complain to the VPAC organization that we do not agree with Eric Spencer's, that he's saying somebody, not in the military, he's very lenient towards military, it's who people who are overseas during election time. He wants them to have a permanent address. I said, wait a minute, whoa, wait a minute. I said, a lot of times people are on 3-4 months vacation. You know, I don't have that luxury, but they're in different countries. Mormon faith are on missions. Contract laborers, they just have to be over there. So most people don't get their mail at a permanent address, they get it online now. I says, you can't force that requirement, and it's not in the rules. So we're arguing with him on this. He keeps coming back with something, but I think we'll prevail. But the procedures manual is still in process, okay? The national level and how it impacts Pima County. The Presidential Commission and the SOS providing our voter data to the Presidential Commission. If you followed this, Michelle Reagan came up and said she was going to give the voter data. Well, her and I started having an argument on email. I says, you have no authority first, because you may have the whole statewide system, but the voter data belongs to each respective county and not you to be giving out. So then I nailed out some other questions. Well, then she started backpedaling, and then she says this, and then she called me because I was just hammering. Maricopa County was hammering, and you know, what is this commission going to do? They don't even know. The commission hasn't met, you know. So she said no, she wasn't going to give the data. Now we have a second request. We're still arguing about that. She hasn't given the voter data. Okay, but I must tell you that she snuck in a bill on a floor amendment and told the recorders that she was not going to do it, but she did it anyway, where it gives her the authority to give the voter data. It has never been that way before. If somebody wanted the voter registration data, they had to come back to the counties they wanted it. So she snuck that in, lied to us, and that's not the first time, okay? So we have massive disagreement, so we're gonna attempt to try to go back and remove her authority to do that. But that'll be another battle amongst other ones. And that leads me to, and I said, oh, the Arizona State Recorders Association. We do have one that's 15 counties. Working relationship with the Secretary of State. The SOS and the county recorders have had and continue to have differences of opinion on many issues. We are slowly working to resolve those issues and educating the Secretary of State on the history and reasons behind why we have processes in place. It got so bad, folks, we had to do a letter to her saying her staff is doing this and this, and it hit the public. So right now, our communication with the Secretary of State, who is entitled only Chief Elections Officer, is we get it in writing. We want her name on it. We're demanding her to go to these meetings, not sending her staff. Because we clearly have figured out that her staff runs that office and not her. And I will share with you that, I don't know if some of you saw the Republic article, we had a heated meeting regarding the future of contractual arrangements regarding the statewide voter system and how much each county is going to pay for this. And her chief of staff was there. Somebody asked her a question, she started to respond, and we're in a room like this. I'm sitting up front, she's back with you. Oh, you heard. And her chief of staff felt very comfortable when she started to respond, stood up and told her to be quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And to his credit, Mr. Fontes, the reporter from Maricopa County, defended her and said, how dare you speak to your boss, who is the elected official, in that manner and tone? And I could not see her directly because there was two other people between me. Her face changed, her expression on her face changed so many colors. And he sat down and got quiet, and I leaned over and said, Michelle, please continue. I will tell you, I would not want to have been in that car with him on that drive back there. But it tells us that he felt comfortable doing that. Okay? Because ultimately, she's responsible for the decisions in her office and the conduct of her employees. That is the same thing in the position I am in. Okay? So we will continue to wade through that. Let me talk a little bit about the statewide voter system. It's called the AVID project, and it's an acronym, and I forget what it means now. It's in the state procurement process right now. This is to be bidding on a potentially new statewide voter system. My chief of staff, Chris Rhodes, I think many of you know him, represents the two large counties on this voting process. And his main focus is to protect the small counties, but still allow Pima County and Maricopa County to have our independent system as we move through this contract process. The biggest question is, the Secretary of State has not confirmed to the recorders or to the Arizona State Procurement where she's getting this funding from. And I says, you know, I don't know about state contracts, but I know in Pima County, you gotta provide your funding source before you even begin the procurement process. You know, otherwise you wasted all the vendors' time, you wasted our staff time, so we'll see how that goes. The other big thing was an argument in the paper regarding the Secretary of State is our statewide procedures manual. Remember, they failed to do it?
Yep.
Failed. There were some things in there that needed to change. I had a bunch of things, and Mr. Spencer just decided he didn't have enough time. And then it came up because of the election that this wasn't followed, they didn't do this. So we're in the process right now. We keep hammering him, saying, you need to give us the procedures manual, because he's doing a complete rewrite. And when we first started it, he gave us all these sections. So I took them home that night. We get them the day before, pages and stuff, and I'm highlighting. My deputy's highlighting. Get up early to go drive. When we get there, he's got a different version. And, you know, so we're going through this, we're going through this. So the only good thing is that he now, during the procedures manual process, is that they do have 2 representatives for the Attorney General office there. We kind of said they need to be in there because the Attorney General and the Governor need to sign off on this. We no longer have to give it to the Department of Justice. So this is a work in process. And what's really been different in the procedures manual process from previous administration, we would allow the public, the League of Women had a representative at these meetings, the political party had representatives in meetings, anybody that wanted to spend their time and go through this long book. And especially people with any kind of disability were allowed to participate. They're not even allowed in. It's just government, So, we were not afraid to talk openly in front of the public. Voting is a public process. That's what we need to understand. So, there's that one thing. And you did mention the Save Our Schools petitions, okay? I must tell you, if somebody has processed a lot of petitions for a volunteer group, they did a very nice job on their petitions, on their random rate. And the other group was when they did the Oro Valley petition process. They were very well done. I can tell you all about the ones that are a nightmare, but that's a different subject. Other topics that people seem not to know that I'd like to get a point on is the signature verification of every single ballot that is a ballot by mail. It seems to be a misconception that people think that we don't check the signatures. I want to assure you that it is the process for all reporters that anybody that mails in a ballot, we check the signature on it. We have everybody's signature on file. How many of you have ever received a call, a letter, an email saying, we question your signature? Okay, there's one gentleman. And so afterwards we tell them, after the election, we'll send you a letter, it'll be stamp free, we need a signature update. It is a process. One of the things that we expedited this year, we tried it and it worked wonderful, is texting. A lot of people don't answer their home phones and their cell phones. If you got the government coming up, you send them a text, they're gonna be like that on and they did, because it's a software program in it. So that was very helpful. Quickly regarding the upcoming elections. I did have a little disagreement with the city of Tucson. They wanted to do their own election, and TUSD and everybody else. I said, no, we're not going to have mix-up of ballots. It does happen. We have mix-up of ballots from husband and wives, but we're able to marry them again as long as we get both ballots back. I think it was cost-effective. I was successful. So we're going to have one ballot for the entire county. The jurisdictions that are going to be, and most of them, except the town of Oro Valley, are all ballot by mail. So our first rollout of ballots is about 400,000. Okay, so everybody will be receiving one ballot, no matter if you live in multiple jurisdictions. Okay, just like we have our regular big elections. So it's a city, Tucson Unified School District, Sunnyside School District, Flowing Wells, Marana Unified School Districts, Drexel Heights Fire District, Avra Valley Fire District, and Picture Rocks Fire Districts. Okay, so if you live in any of these jurisdictions, you will be getting a ballot in the mail. In the town of Oro Valley, because of a little quirk in the law, but we will be fixing it next year on how a bond works on their particular bond for a park, okay? They had to do a traditional polling location, but 75% of those registered voters are on the permanent early voting list. So those people will have a traditional polling location on that. Voter registration cutoff is October 10th. Ballots will be mailed out October 11th. We will have several replacement ballot sites. That's a requirement of law when you're doing an all ballot by mail election, that you must provide a replacement ballot site in that district. So we have those all identified. And the last day to request a ballot by mail or get a replacement ballot is Friday, October 27th. All this information is on my website that's up there. And the other thing I want to quickly cover is that to get the word out on your mail-in ballots, people need to check on my website early ballot status. You click on, you answer the information, it'll tell you when we mailed your ballot, if we received your ballot, if we accepted your signature, or it will say we have a problem with your signature and you need to contact our office, and then when we send it forward to elections for tabulation. So you can track it like FedEx, you know, on that one. And people like it because that was the one thing they say, we don't know what happens when we put it in the post office and it's gone. You keep checking it even if you dropped it off at the polling location on election day. And the last thing I want to cover is this little flyer. I gave you some information. We are going back to the state legislature again because in the method of voting, the trends have changed. People are voting either at our early voting sites or getting a ballot in mail. So less and less people are going to traditional polling locations. So we do have our traditionalists that like to go into, but we also always have early voting sites. I have them all over. We know where our problems are, and that's the week before election day. And these are what we call people who are our problem voters. Didn't update their address, shredded their ballot, have been inactive. So we are going to be planning for, and it's usually big elections, we're going to open up additional early voting sites that week before, so we can take the pressure off of downtown, the north side, my east, where the lines were at. Maricopa County had the same problems. We're moving into a ballot on demand system. I'm doing a test pilot for the November, where the ballots will be printed out there. You know, technology has changed. I have to thank Maricopa County because we didn't realize that we were going to have so many elections. We thought it was just the city of Tucson, and bam, all the school districts, and then all the fire districts. So Maricopa was kind enough to loan me additional ballot on demand printers they had to test it in the recorder's office how it worked, so we can go that route in the 2018 election. Okay, so these are technology. Maricopa County is doing something more different, more aggressive, but they got money. We don't have that money. So you do what you can with the financial resources you can do. So how many in here are traditionalists that just go to vote? They want to go to their assigned polling locations. See, the best you get it by mail. But we'll take care of you too that like to go to a traditional polling location, because even if we go to an all ballot by mail elections, on election day you must have replacement sites open on election day. So that's technically a polling location too on that day. Okay, it's not going to be your assigned polling location like we do, but it's just you got to have numerous ones out there. Okay, that's where Maricopa County is going to, like these massive vote centers. We're not there because I don't have the financial resources to do that one out there. Okay, but we hope to move forward into as people want to move technology and aggressiveness. Okay, so those are the things I wanted to cover quickly. A lot of things are on my website, but I'd be more than happy to take any questions on any subject.
I will. I think I'll just. You want to stand so we can all hear you?
You always hear about all these massive number of votes, but how many people
prosecute?
What's the question?
Okay, it's how many people that have attempted to vote twice, is that your thing? How many we sent? If it's a small election, it'll be a few, you know, if it's a large election, you may have more. The county attorney will then come back with a report, and most of them are very old people, you know. When the permanent early voting list was initiated in law, was in 2008. Okay. Several years ago, right? Do the math. A lot of people were older. Through the years, people have gotten dementia, sick, don't have. But there's no way for us to get them off the list because they have to be of sound mind to remove them. We do not accept power of attorney. So we have discussed this with the recorders and said, how are we going to do it? But you know, we have to cautiously approach the legislature, saying, okay, what are we going to do? How do we do this? The person can't sign their name anymore. They can't do this. And the spouse, we usually say, quit sending my ballot. I keep telling you my husband's dementia, my wife is this, you know. And we can't just arbitrarily stop it because we can't have that discussion. So it's a concern right now, but with so many other things going on, to me, it's just send the ballot. We just tell them to shred it and we'll move on. We'll attempt that one. So the county attorney will give us a report, and that's what it is. And then it's ultimately her decision whether she thinks there's enough evidence to prosecute.
But you're not talking about thousands.
No, we're not talking thousands, no.
There's so much fraud. There's all these fraudulent votes.
Well, remember what I said.
Yeah, nobody.
It's a buzzword, you know. Nobody ever asked me the number how many I sent over.
I promise this won't be a speech, but I'm a member of the Green Valley branch, and I'm Senator Andrea D'Alessandro. I'm the only Southern Arizona senator of either party on Senate Judiciary. So I just want to thank you, Byron. You know, I have had a history of trouble with Eric Meyer. When they were passing the dark money bill, we didn't have public hearings or open sessions. All they had was show and tell things where there was no opportunity for input from anyone. And then it comes to Senate Judiciary on the last day to hear Senate bills in the Senate. And I said, this is ridiculous. This is major legislation. You haven't had any private meetings with us to discuss it. And he was very condescending to me. He said, oh, Senator D'Alessandro, I know you're not a lawyer, but you know, I was a CPA. So Eric Spencer and I have an interesting relationship and this is all from a candidate's point of view. Historically, and I've run 5 times already, historically, you know, you do your main filing for your candidate petitions. In Phoenix, you have to if you're a clean elections candidate, as I am frequently, but you can hand in supplemental candidate petitions up until the end. So I go and turn some in Tucson. They won't give me a receipt. They won't give me a piece of paper that I can prove that I turned in these extra petitions. My seatmate, Daniel Hernandez, was doing his primary filing that day. They told him to go to Phoenix, that they couldn't give him any proof that he had filed.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, no, I don't. I just have 3 more points. I'm sorry. There's always been a problem with Michelle Reagan, with online petitions for signatures. It took her months and months, many delays. August 1st, their clean elections people were supposed to do equal things, be allowed, and I called them every day because they had really messed it up badly, and they blamed Pima and Maricopa County. And I said, because we don't have names on our precincts, we just have numbers. I said, no, wait, this is not something new that happened. So, and then they kept lying about it. You know, Ken Bennett, I never had problems with any of these things. I know there were probably some internal problems that you faced, but this is horrific from reporters' point of view, from candidates' point of view, and voters. So I thank you for bringing all of these issues. So I'm sorry I don't have
That's
a
okay.
question.
That's okay.
I will comment on your equal thing. That was a bill that they passed, okay? And then when it comes close to implementing, they then approach Maricopa and Pima County saying, you gotta rewrite your product. Well, they go, time out, whoa. I go, what? And they got the email address for one of my IT staff. my deputy, and of course my IT staff forwarded it to management, and we kindly told them, my IT staff works for me. Okay, we tell them what their projects is. I says, lack of preparation on your part doesn't all of a sudden constitute emergency on mine. So if you didn't tell us, we are having the same problem with getting the publicity pamphlet that she created this law. There's no mention of the recorders on there. There's no mention of voter registration. Well, then they figured it out because they were dealing with motor vehicle. So the recorders didn't object because it didn't involve us. Guess what? It now involves us. Because for them to implement a law that they created, in order for somebody to sign on to get a publicity pamphlet electronically. And first of all, I said, who's going to take that booklet that's this thick electronically, you know? I says, most people it's going to reject. I don't want to be responsible for bounce back email addresses and all this other stuff. I got to keep up with the regular addresses. So they came up with that. In order for somebody to do that, they have to re-register. And they can only do it online. And then they opt in and opt out. I said, wait a minute. So then I have to go through programming changes. Then Mr. Spencer, because we said, we don't have time to do this right now. So did Maricopa County. He then sends me a missile. He says, then I am going to refuse to send you any easy voter records that legally go through on service Arizona. I says, they may just be people wanting to register to vote, don't have anything to do with receiving a publicity pamphlet. So we've been going on and on. I think that's just, we're just talking two different subject matters, you know, and I did that one. So it's a constant battle, time consuming, aggressiveness, challenging, and that's why I said I want everything online. Any other questions?
Judy?
I have a three-part question. This is very interesting, glad to have it. Can you tell me the approximate number of people in 2016 that went to the polls, the number of polls you have open, and how much it costs to have all those polls open?
The polling information.
Did you all hear the question?
No. Okay.
She was referring to the actual numbers in 2016.
In 2016, I don't have the number of polling places. It was 240 things. In elections, that's just told me that they're going to reduce the amount of precincts, which reflects the polling locations. I don't remember that quantity off the hand. As far as the cost, most of them, I don't also have that information because I'm not responsible for polling location. But you got to have five workers there. You know, think about it. Each one gets paid $130. Let's say, you know. You got to pay for the rent of the establishment, pay for the trucking company, pay for the staff, all that stuff out there. So they're not cheap, you know. We think it's more cost effective to do all ballot by mail. But I can tell you for the 2016, there were 427,102 people actually cast a ballot in that election. 324,025 were early ballots. Most of them by mail, and we had over 12,000 people go to our early voting sites. The other thing was polling location was only 103,000. So you can see where the pressure load is up there. So the mindset of people is changing on the method that they want to be voting. But again, remember, even if I said if we go all ballot by mail, on election day we would still have to have replacement sites. You know, we would have all over. It would be more cost effective to run it that way.
Okay, question? Yes, go ahead.
And then what percentage of early voting ballots get returned?
Mean undeliverable?
No, meaning, if you
Voted?
send out
Oh.
a 500,000 and you get, how many you send out and what percentage come back in? That are valid.
Okay, I don't have that number offhand, but in a major election, it's about 85. Oh, wait a minute, I do have that number. Again, on my website. In the 2016 early ballot for the general, we had mailed out 373,195 ballots. 311,592 came back, so that was an 83% return rate.
And then, the follow-up question would be, what percentage of people voters, registered voters vote overall?
Now, that's a different story, okay, because what like I said, 83% of the people that got it.
Okay, they need to hear her question.
Oh, what was the,
The question, the first question was, what percentage of early voting ballots get returned? Okay, and FN said about 83%. So then my follow-up question was, what percentage of registered voters vote in that same election? So just to see if there's some way to compare the efficacy.
she said she wants to know is what is the percentage of actual registered voters who vote, either going through early voting and, or at the polling location. You get a higher return when you do a ballot by mail election. That is a proven fact. And yet, I don't know at the top of my head what it was in the last one. For the city of Tucson, recently, it was an all ballot by mail, but remember, that's only 3 wards. Okay, 3 wards. So you had like a 28% rate now in those 3 wards. Now, with those type of elections, okay, you gotta remember that in Ward 5, if you're a registered Democrat, you only got 1 candidate, so some people's mindset is, well, who cares, you know? And if you lived in, I think also in, the only contested race was Ward 3, the Democrat side, and then the independent. So that's why it depends on the election, you know. As far as the last, remember the city did a special election in May. I don't remember the statistical turnout, but again, that was all ballot by mail. And that was something that voters had to do to themselves. It was an issue. Okay, that's going to impact your pocketbook, and that still did not have a big turnout. You know, usually money turns out everybody, you know, but and some don't. So it depends on the elections. Elections are either candidate-driven or issue-driven. Okay, so it just depends. It just depends on one thing.
Thank you. Other questions? Vivian, and then we'll go to you.
You had mentioned that you are in some kind of a system that looks at whether someone has voted in another state. Is that Chris Kovac's system, or is there another?
Well, that is Chris. That is okay. The question is on the CrossState Match. Okay, what we do is I think there's like 28 states that participate. I may be off on that number. And we compare our data with the person's name, middle name, date of birth, last 4 digits of social security number. Those are about the major things that are what we call hard matches. Because you can't use driver's license because every state has different driver's license. So those are about the thing. So we ask for records back and forth. That's also how we cancel people. They say we get the registration. We send information back and forth. We work with the counties. When it comes up that both of those people on a hard match voted, we're looking at, okay, where were they registered, did that, so we have to prove the evidence. So it's either a signature roster if they voted at the polls, or, and that's why we scan the ballot affidavits, because that way the retention on a paper ballot affidavit is only 6 months. A retention on an image for me is 6 years. Because by the time these investigations go through the process, you know, we're past the 6 months. And also why I image those ballot affidavits when they come in, we barcode them and it loads up the information to the voter that we received your ballot. So it's a 2-step operation there. So that is the one. The recorders are now looking at ERIC. It's a different system that does things, and we are meeting with the executive director next week to see exactly how that system works, because the person that does the CrossState Match we have concerns with now is he's the one that's leading the presidential commission and some of these other things. It was a good step process. We have learned from it, but we want to grow further because people are concerned. Well, look at President Trump had 3 or 4 family members that were registered in 2 states. It is the voter's responsibility. Everybody wants to be careful about saying that. I said, well, I'm not caring. We are, as individuals, responsible for whatever we do. On every form, it says, are you registered in somewhere else? Okay, so they do that. And what we do is once a month, we print that information out and we send it to that state. They are now registered. So everybody's supposed to be doing that. But if the voter doesn't give the county wherever they're moving that information, then we're never going to catch them. So there is a responsibility for citizens. I also say the same thing. It's also up to the voter's responsibility to update their address. I can tell you on election day, we will get the call saying, I don't know where I'm supposed to go. And I pull up the file, and sometimes I say, I must be doing this too long. Because I could see how many letters we sent, and they never responded to our letters saying, update, do this, do that. And it's a sense of responsibility, but it'll still be my fault.
Okay, so 2 things. One, could you clarify 6 years you must hold on to the voter registration form?
It's the ballot affidavit.
Oh.
It's 6 years that I hold on to the voter registration form. The voter registration is held on until the person is either canceled, moves, or died. Okay, but we maintain the image of all these records. Okay, we may not have the paper. Okay, the ballot affidavit, the one you mail back with the tape with your signature,
right,
we image those on so we can preserve it. So when we do these court investigations for people voting in 2 states, I still have the evidence. Because by the time we catch up with them, a paper retention is only 6 months. By that time, the election's already destroyed us. My retention is 6 years on the ballot affidavit.
But not the digitized, not the ballot image.
I don't have anything to do with the ballot. That would be elections.
Which is actually my question. What is the difference between the Elections Commission and Brad Nelson and the county recorder? I mean, how do you divvy up the responsibilities for elections?
Repeat your question.
The question was, how do I divvy up the responsibility for the recorder's department and the elections department? There's 2 separate departments in this county, okay? I cannot, Mr. Nelson does not work for me. He does not report to me. I have no control over him. I must work with them to conduct elections. He reports to Mr. Huckleberry, who technically in every county, boards of supervisors are responsible for elections department in statute. The board then decides who they are going to issue the responsibility of the elections department to. In some counties, it could be the clerk of the board, it could be an elections director, or it could be the recorders. There are less and less recorders now that have that responsibility. It just depends on the county. Right now, the counties that have agreements with their boards to oversee the elections department is Maricopa County, Coconino County, and Pinal County, she gave it back, and Navajo County does that. So I just right now at the top of my head, there's only 2. Navajo may have it, but I'm not sure. They keep flipping back and forth, you know, it depends. And remember, we have 5 new recorders in the state. You know, we have 5 new recorders.
And what does the election department do? Are they responsible for the mechanics of the election? That's what I don't understand.
The elections department, it says, what is the responsibility of the elections department? Those are also all set in statutes, okay? They're responsible for precinct lines, the census things, printing of the ballots, tabulation of the ballots. Those are their primary functions that they do. I'm responsible for the voter registration information. I have overlays of various jurisdictional lines. We have congressional, legislators, cities, towns, you wouldn't believe how many fire districts there are around here. Special districts, I just created another one, Rocking K Development, there's a special district, I don't know what it is. Aho has a couple of special districts. I'm responsible for that. It's based on addressing, where you live will tell you where you're going, where you're gonna be eligible to vote for on different things. That's what it is. I'm responsible for balloting of the mail, sending out early ballots. Elections are responsible for giving me the ballots or the layout, they do all that. They are also the filing officer. We won't get into the campaign finance thing, but they have to be the receivers of different campaign finance and things of that. These are all defined in statute as to who's responsible for what. I am also responsible for another division, which is the land trap recording division. People forget it's two different things. You know, if you have a mortgage, a deed on property, got a lien, you're in my office filing for that information. Okay, so I do two different thought processes. These are also guarded by statute and really part of the state constitution, how they divvy it up, who is the responsibility.
Okay, go ahead.
First off, FN, thank you. I want to say that, you know, and a great job over the years, because, you know, I've looked at your department for years. You've always done a great job, and I'm very interested in this thing about, I didn't realize that if you have a paper document on a state election, you hold it for 6 months. But if they make an image of it, it's 6 years. I didn't know that. Is that by statute, or how does that come about?
Well, the paper one, the retention schedule, is by state law, okay? You know, because they take up space, boxes and stuff like that. So there is no retention level set for ballot images. So I created my own. I said, give me 6 years. And then what I said, when the 6 years is up, I may choose to archive them. So I can not delete them, but I don't need to go back there and get them. You know, we can put them on a hard drive, and if they're taking up images, as you know, take a lot of space. They take a lot of space. So so I have these systems. Of course, you can get a smaller system. I used to have a computer room. Now I just got servers, and I'm holding this, and I have backups of everything because of my land transaction records. We have finished digitizing all the way back prior to statehood. Okay. So I've got all this, and we go back into Spanish, and it's fascinating. We're indexing back, and we're back into 1984. So the people are doing that one. I will be long retired before that project is ever done. But the imaging is done. But you got to be able to find it. So we're cross-referencing names, and that's a continually on project when we're a little bit not as busy in election, and I cross-train in my department. I'm a big believer in cross-training, okay? I can pull people when I need them. I got to do the service. So people that are assigned to my recording divisions are capable of doing signature checking, data entry when the load comes in, Plus, I also hire a lot of temporary people. I only have really 42 permanent staff members, okay? And I'm a money-making department. Don't get me confused. I make money for the county. I tried to make them allow me to be an enterprise fund, and I didn't win that battle. Gets lost in some rat hole over there. But I bring about 60 people on. The operation, Vivian, I think you have seen my operation over at it is a massive. And I hired some new IT people, and I said, when I call you to meet me in the garage parking lot, you be ready. Oh, I'm leaving. I said, get in the car. And I said, we are housed at 6550 South Country Club. Okay, that is our physical address. We refer it as we're going to the club. It's not the social club. It is not, but we're going to the club. So when you say the word club, you know it's a location. I give acronyms for a lot of stuff, so we don't have to repeat it. So my IT staff goes with me. I says, you stay right with me when we're in the hub of an election cycle. I says, you hang with me and don't get in anybody's way, because I need you to understand what you design and develop for us is allowing me to do what we're walking in that room. I could visualize it, I could verbalize it, does you no good. When they walked in, they said, my God, I says, you make me run so I can do what I do. And I tell my staff, your job is to execute the policies that I want to do for this county. Don't tell me how we can't do it. Tell me how we can do it. And my IT staff, how long will it take you to get there? And how much will cost me? That's their job. My job will be if IT makes a mistake, it will be my job to explain it to the public. Pretty simple.
But getting back to it, so it's a good business, it's a good policy that you have of keeping them 6 years. It's not a statute or.
No, it's not a statute, it's my
Okay.
policy. A lot of the things I do in my office are my policies. When we question a signature, I found out most recorders have changed their thought process. Because to me, when we get a ballot in the mail, we are actually, if we don't like the signature, we become the challenger of that ballot. In statute, there's clear definition at a polling location how to challenge a voter. There's nothing on an early ballot. So I view it, interpret it as we are challenging it. That's why I implemented, you must call them, you must email them, you must send a letter, and now we're doing the texting. And then when you get from round 2, because some of them come in earlier, then you will attempt to do it again. So at least we did our due diligence. Now, whether they respond or not, we can't do it, okay? I'm not gonna get in my car and go chase them down. Now, that is another argument what I had with Eric Spencer, because, and some of the other reporters, because the question came up with ballots that dropped off on election day. We actually start processing them the day after election on Wednesday. Okay. So if I don't like a signature, I arbitrarily picked a date, nothing in statute. But I wanted to treat the voter that is the same, whether they mailed their ballot as soon as they got it and I questioned their signature, or they choose, which the law says you can drop it off on election day at any polling location, the opportunity to rectify because we didn't like the ballot. Some of my colleagues says, no, if you don't like it, you invalidate it. I says, then you didn't inform it, the voter, and the voter will never know. I says, I feel it's our duty to inform and at least give them an arbitrary time. So in our letter and our texts, you have until 5, that's why texting's so good, because they get it right away, or email. They won't get the letter because now it's got to go to Phoenix and back and all that stuff. And we were able to rectify them. That's one of the challenges they gave me in the CD2 recount, because Cochise County did it and I did it. You know, they just invalidated it and I did it. So they went after me because there was nothing in statute. I says, and there's nothing in the procedures manual. I says, my philosophy is I want to be fair to the voter. I says, and I will win in court every step of the way.
Whoa, now there are 5 hands. Let's go first to Mary, then we'll.
I have a question about the cross-state voting. What triggers look at
CrossCheck.
Cross-check voting, if the first name, the middle name, the last name, the date of birth, and the last 4 digits of the social security number will trigger that. That means that's a hard match.
But what makes you look for it?
Because the data between our state and another state, we bump the files, as I can't think of another word, and saying, oh, all these components I just mentioned match. There's a possibility they could be the same person. The high probability of a Richard Lopez living here and a Richard Lopez living there, but are they gonna have the same date of birth, and are they gonna have the same last 4 digits of social security number? So that's what we call it's a hard match. You may have the first name, you may have the same, like twins, be similar, okay? But they're not gonna have the last 4 digits, and that's what constitutes a hard match, and we'll look at it.
Your question?
Yeah, do students cause any particular problems that are different than the population general?
The only, it says, do students cause a problem? Students, I don't view it as causing a problem. It's to me, and they're coming in this week because they're gonna start doing voter registration drives. It's the process of educating them, okay? Because they get caught up in the movement of, oh, they're here, but they live in California, somebody else. The key question is, where are you gonna decide is your primary residence? What is your residence? Here, living in dorm, it's technically, or an apartment, a temporary address, because they're gonna go back to mom and dad, they're gonna keep their license there, mom and dad is gonna claim them on their taxes, you know, so you gotta think about all this stuff. And we also don't want a student to lose a scholarship. We have had that happen, because they get caught up in the movement on campus, well, I'm gonna be part of the party process, and I'm gonna vote here, and then they come in that their scholarship was tied to the state, because the state did something. Every state has something different. So we work with them the student's responsibility to define their question. Is mom and dad gonna claim them on their taxes, you know, and where they're gonna be doing at, and where's their permanent address? You have to think about that. We also have the same thing with high school seniors if they join the services, because they're gonna be out. We wanna get them on understanding the process of what does it mean to be an FPC voter. That is a military voter. Because the one thing they use when they get their military email address, it goes with them. So we'll be able to electronically send their ballot to them, but they gotta fill out a separate voter registration that's a federal form that gives us permission to mail them electronically, okay? Because they'll never get it in the mail. The mail service is something else, okay? Does that answer your question? Okay.
We'll go to you and then who? Yeah. Yes, please,
Okay,
stand.
my question is, when you check the signatures, are you checking them off the original signature card?
We are the question is on the checking of the early ballot signatures, what do we check? We are checking them off the image of the voter registration form. We scan every single voter registration form that we receive in the office. It's an image. And
so
then,
is it the whole form that they see when they check the image?
well, really it is actually just the clipped signature. And if the operator that's checking does not like the signature, we can bring up the file and look at all their signatures that we ever have for them. And if we don't like the signature, then the operator will go to a second person and we'll ask them, would you please look at that signature? And then if they agree that they don't, it goes to the problem ballot team, they fill out a form, the problem ballot team will look at it. If they don't like it, then it commences the send the email, try to call them, do the texting, send the letter, and start.
I've seen my own signature changing. I'm sure that's others.
And we do bring a forensic expert to come in and teach us every other year. I invite the other counties in here for their staffing too. We are by no stretch of the imagination's signature experts. They tell us what to look for, the similarities, how people will try to either trace, do whatever. On our ballot affidavit, we say no POA, no power of attorney. It is also a policy in my office, because I went back and changed the ballot form, ballot affidavit language on it because it was outdated. Even if somebody assists them, because they'll fill it out right. But my policy states we must speak to the voter. Because if the voter can't answer the questions, because remember I said dementia, Alzheimer's, wife knows, husband knows, in a nursing home, males to go in, I mean, they're taking care of their loved ones, okay? And we feel very compassionate for them. Sometimes we have stroke patients. Stroke patients, depending on where the stroke injury, they may not be able to sign, but they can think. And that's all we need. So we track that in our communication with them. And if we hear them coaching, like they can't give us the date of birth or what, you know, some of the things that we ask them. These are common things that shouldn't stumble a person. But if we hear coaching, they'll do it because we know what's happening. That person, we also have people that are paralyzed, automobile accident. Some people have stamps. We have that on file. We know which ones they are because We know that they're gonna be voting by mail. Somebody may assist them, but they're gonna do it because we have talked to these people and they are sound mind. Their body just won't function. Their mind is perfectly fine, okay? So each case is unique.
Bev?
Thanks for being here at that. Who is Eric Spencer? I may be the only one that really knows.
Mr. Spencer, they go, who is Eric Spencer? Eric Spencer is the state elections director. He works for Secretary of State Michelle Reagan. I met Mr. Spencer as the head legal counsel for Congresswoman Martha McSally during the 2 court challenges for CD2. That's how my working relations are. Mr. Spencer is a very smart lawyer. I give him credit for that. He served our country honorably. He's, I believe, retired Marine. So he's very worldwide. We just philosophically disagree with him on some issues. So that is who he is.
I see Shirley raising her hand, and
Well,
I know what you're
raise
going
it
to tell
because
us.
The state board officers met with Eric Spencer as he was running the
About a
election
year
part.
ago, yeah.
Yes, for Michelle Reagan. So we gave him a list of things we thought would better elections in the state, but he is a very smart, slick lawyer.
Are there any other questions? I see Kathy.
Yeah, is the state of Arizona moving forward on mail-in only voting? And also, how do you feel about like automatic registration? Like if somebody gets a driver's license, they're automatically registered?
2-part question. The first question is the state of Arizona moving into all ballot by, we call it ballot by mail elections. It is the desire and the wish of the recorders to move in that direction, okay? Because actually, Secretary of State is not responsible for elections. They can't send a ballot, they can't design a ballot, they can't send a signature, they do nothing, okay? Even though she's got the title of State Elections Director. All that responsibility is borne by the counties. All the cost of conducting the election is borne by the counties, except the state is required to pay the counties something about the publicity pamphlets or something. They don't pay me anything. When state legislatures, Andrea, when you guys candidates run, state don't pay us, the counties a dime. The counties pay for everything on the ballot. So it's Pima County taxpayers that are paying for it, even though the state wants to make the rules. So that is the desire. But again, reinforce, early balloting will still be going on once we mail ballots. Every county will have early balloting going. And then on election day, you have to have replacement locations and multiple replacement ballot locations. So that is it. It is a discussion we need to have. We've been successful in getting some sponsors, but you know, for some reason, there are certain legislators that do not want it, but they don't already know that when the early ballot totals, because all the people on the permanent early voting list, elections are over, folks. Once that first run of early ballots are, then it's done, you know? So people going to the polling location ain't going to change the direction of where this election is going, you know? So there are some things. And your other question was?
Automatic
registration.
Oh, automatic registration.
Yeah.
There is a young lady that has reached out to the recorders, and there's some kind of talk about an initiative. I believe she's coming into my office, because I will sit down and talk to them. I will not make a decision whether I think it's good or bad. That's up to the citizens, because ultimately the petitions are going to be coming to me. However, we must keep in mind that automatic registrations, okay? There are certain faiths that do not believe in voting, okay? That's number one. You have to think about convicted felons that have not had their rights restored. Number two, some people do not want to be forced to be voting in our voting process. So there are some issues with automatic, because I think they need to have some opt-out options in there, and not force everybody, you know. It is our constitutional and luxury to voting in the voting process, okay? But you can't force things. The only thing I can think they ever force people to do is pay property taxes if you own things, you know? So, you know, there is something. Some people have even said, maybe we should get voter turnout higher if you force a penalty, like some countries do, you know, a fine. But, you know, if they don't have a desire and education to do that, you know, what are they gonna do? Just gonna go in there, sign in, and then leave an empty ballot, not actually vote on anything, you know? You know, you have this issue. So we have to think it through, you know? People have different mindsets on, remember I said that earlier? Because as I thought about it, you know, think about it, you know, people say with the definition of poor. Well, being poor is a state of mind. Somebody may think they're poor because they can't afford to go out and buy the new car. Somebody else may think that they're poor because they can't afford to buy a car. You know, so everybody has different thought process of what impacts you, you know. I have been accused of, I said I am of Hispanic nature. I am a full-blooded Hispanic. My father was born in Mexico. He came over to this country at 5 days old. He was sworn in as a U.S. citizen at 21. But I have been accused by other Hispanics that I am not a true Hispanic because I'm not dark enough. I am a lighter tone, color skin. They accuse me of it being my married name, not my maiden name. You know, so, you know, again, you know, everybody is different. President Barack Obama, they identified him as being black. Technically, he has a white mother and a black father. He's not black. He projects being black, but he is 50-50. And nowadays, if you look at young people, they do not, and I call them hang-ups regarding race, sexual orientation, whatever, because if you look at them, they're a hodge 50-50, you know? They don't see the hatred that we grew up with race. Hatred is not born into us, folks. It is developed, okay? And that's through what I've asked my nieces and nephews to give me different, because I have different viewpoints of my own nieces and nephews, and I have 16. Some of them are Democrat, some of them are Republican. Of course, my Democrat one says, how could they be? I said, okay, I respect them all. You know, they made their mind for whatever it was, okay? And I told them, I says, what is your definition of a conservative, and what is your definition of liberal? It was all over the place. I says, you know, one time I found a 1938 dictionary, and I looked up a liberal. A liberal back then was defined as a Catholic. So, you know, I try to do that one. Are there any other questions? You know, we have to think about this. Think people where they come from. What is their personal life experiences? Somebody new?
You spoke about people, reasons they don't want to vote. I've heard before many people say they don't want to be registered to vote because they don't want to get called for jury duty. Do you in fact get called for jury duty if you're registered to vote only?
And the big question.
Okay, the question is, people don't want to register to vote because they'll be called for jury duty. You will be called for jury duty if you have an Arizona state driver's license. They pull them both. Or Arizona state ID card. So you're going to call no matter what. That's been one of these other myths that has been around to repeat. Somebody says it, and then it's got a life of its own.
Right.
Another question?
This woman here, and then Nancy.
I don't think I was hearing correctly, but you were talking about Oro Valley having its own separate ballot. Will Oro Valley have a mail-in ballot, or is it all the polls for that election?
Okay, it's regarding the Oro Valley town election. Oro Valley, because of the nature of the call, and they cited the statute, they are going to have what we call a traditional election. But those citizens in Oro Valley who are on the permanent early voting list will get a ballot in the mail.
Okay, that's what I
Okay,
wanted to know.
and then the other ones will, that they also have assigned polling locations. or they can call my office and we'll mail them a ballot, okay? So we are working, because I was surprised that the town of Oro Valley, who used to have all ballot by mail, then they changed it. They threw me off guard when they didn't call it all ballot by mail. They cited the statute, and I'm working with the representative from that area to say, hey, this is this obsolete thing about the kind of the nature of the bond that they're going for, and they didn't want to be subject to a potential litigation because of this. And I agreed with them. I said, we need to change that so the governing entity can kind of do that one. So I can't say that the whole county is going to be all ballot by mail elections because of the town of Oro Valley. But 75% of the people in Oro Valley are already on the permanent early voting list, so look at ballot anyway.
Okay, Nancy?
What is Arizona's law or policy on restoration of voting rights of people who have served as a criminal sentence?
Question is, Arizona, what are the laws governing Arizona restoring somebody's voting rights? On my website is some information about people restoring their voting rights. Okay. It is a process because it says, one part in there, it says that you have to go back to the judge that sentenced you. But what happened if you had it out of state? And every state has different laws, you know. And then there, you know, so there is not a quick, short answer for that because every case is unique. Because we always say if you're a convicted felon, you can have a single offense, a single crime happen, but have multiple felony convictions within that charge, depending on it. So we send them back to the courts. We send them, they can begin the process. But we don't like to say, well, you got, because it's also a clause in there, you got to do restitution. So if you had any monetary thing that you had to pay, whatever the crime was, then you got to pay that one. So there is a process that they can go back to the courts. It is not an easy process. However, there are a lot of lawyers here in Tucson that offer assistance on that process. Jonathan Rothschild was a member of that group and organization, did that, of lawyers to do that. But on my website, I think of training how to do it, we send them to Superior Court to begin that process. This lady right here.
Cassandra?
Can you go back to the university students' plight in voting and losing their scholarships? You could elaborate a little bit?
Well, okay, it was the rights of students of losing their potential scholarships. The key thing to that is the students going to college here need to identify where they're going to deem where their permanent residence address is. And, you know, is mom and dad going to claim them as a deduction on their taxes from their state? But some states, depending, because this has happened, this is why I always say that, is that what kind of scholarship did they get? Because we don't know. They just say, well, I got a scholarship. Well, every scholarship is unique, and there's rules to scholarships, okay? So you want to go back and check that. Is there one tied saying that you have to remain in that state or whatever it is? So we caution them on that because it's their responsibility to look into that. Because unfortunately, I've had it, and Maricopa County has had it, where the student, because they did register in here, and you're affirming, saying, I'm a resident of Arizona now. They lost their scholarship. We don't want that to happen to any student just because they registered to vote. They need to go back and get a ballot in the state where they're at and participate in that process. That's why we don't like to give short yes or no answers on certain things, because in that category, because it could impact them. You know, it just depends. Go ahead.
Because students move so many times during their life, even within the city.
Believe me, I know.
Do they have to report every single, if they move down the street or out of the dorm or?
If you move within an apartment complex, because your apartment number changed, you need to re-register to vote. Because everything that we do is by your mailing address, okay? So it'll get kicked back to us if you move within the same big apartment complex, because it's going to come back because your address is missing. So that's why we always stress my press, even if you move within that one, even if the postman knows who you are and knows all this, Because it's automated, everything is automated, folks, okay? So we need to keep that in mind. So we keep stressing that one.
One more question, Joe?
Could you speak on the future of voter repression in the state of Arizona?
You mean voter suppression?
Yeah, suppression, I'm sorry, yes. Repression, oppression.
Well, you know, voter suppression is another one of those things becoming a buzzword here, you know, they throw it out there, but, you know, it means something to something. So I don't use those things, you know. To me, I know some Democrats disagree with me. I don't think having an Arizona state driver's license is that hard. Some doctor's offices won't even see you unless you show your ID card, you know. You can't board now an airplane, you know, so, you know, some of the, I don't know what happens in other states, okay? I know the state of Arizona, our driver's license lasts for 12 years unless you get, what is it, 70, or then you gotta go back more often, I don't remember what the rule is. They made me come back and take my picture again when I hit 62. Or was it 61? I don't remember what it was. But anyway, and I forgot to take off the requirement for glasses because I wore contacts and glasses, but I had LASIK surgery, and I still had a restriction. So I forgot I should have removed that one. Okay, so I don't think that there's so much suppression in this state. There may be true suppression in other states, like the shortening of early voting. The limiting of early voting sites, you know, and all this stuff, because, you know, the post office, we're not the only state that's having postal issues. Postal reform is going on across the country. So we need to look that up. And I will have to tell you, our post office here, you know, I've been a very big advocate, I don't know if Andrea is she still here? Her too, about the post office. They have an interim. This post office is so afraid of me. It's a good thing because they'll know I'll get after them. And our congressmen and our senators, and I got to give a shout out to Councilmember Richard Fimbres, he's been all over this, of defending it, and both of our congressmen, Raul Grajala and Martha McSally. The post office works. We communicate with them. They know when we're mailing ballots. They know when my delivery truck of 400,000 ballots are coming in. They process this, okay? So we tell them, I'm getting ready to meet the interim postmaster, I can't remember his name right now. I even requested if I can pick up special mail on Saturday before election day at Cherryville. They do that. On election night, we make our last pickup. When all the trucks are coming in, that's why I keep that bright yellow, because it sticks out. And they go through it. And my deputy came back and he was laughing. He says, I don't know what you said to them in that last meeting when you had big shots from Phoenix and I can't remember. It was the chairman of the postal thing, the post office. He said, all management was out on the floor going through all that mail. He says, all the guys with neckties tucked in with their shirt. He says, going through every ballot. He says, it's what we call good public service. I said, so we will continue working with them. They at the week before election, they don't send up to Phoenix because they know they understand. So I have a good communication with the staff. I know Buddy in the background. If you have a good working relationship with the decision makers, but if you have a better working relationship with the worker bees, they will do anything you want. It's called respecting one another. And I give praise to the post office here. I can't answer for, they didn't like me up in Phoenix because they keep saying they can handle everything, and I already knew they could. But we're going to be going that way. So shout out to the Cherryville station.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's my understanding that during the 2016 presidential election cycle, there was a huge increase in the voter registrations, yes, and here in Pima County. Could you tell us what percentage were thrown out and what were the errors? Like I heard that some of the voter registration forms weren't filled out properly and that a huge percentage of them weren't added to the rolls. Is that true, A?
Well, she's saying that a huge percentage. Well,
I don't
there's
know.
an adjective.
Yeah,
what
real.
does huge mean to you?
Yeah.
You know, I try to work with the various groups and organizations that are doing voter registration drives. And we've had them come in, just like we had the instructions with the league, we're bringing another group in. All you need is one bad paid circulator can just destroy an organization doing out there. Because that's where the issue comes in, when they get monetary thing. So we're working on that. I don't want to tell you how we're doing it and how to achieve it. But it's a goal moving forward in filling out these voter forms. We did have some problems where there were incomplete, bad addresses. You know, the pitfall comes in when you give it to the person that's the paid person or the volunteer, and they're filling it out. Because they're moving fast, because they want to get to the next one, you know. If individuals are filling out, they're taking their time, okay? So we didn't have a huge amount, we did have some problems, but with every problem that we have, we send a communication, a letter with the new voter registration form saying, you must fill it out, complete it out, sending it back to us. Because we do have some people that try to register to vote at their business address. Well, we know which ones are business addresses because we look on the assessor files. And then we say you can't register at your business address. It was a big thing during the water wars. We had a lot of businesses trying to register because our businesses were in the city, but they lived out. We fixed all them, and they did that one. So we tried to do that. Even with the homeless people, we were able to put them in a designated place. The key thing is that we got to have an address for them to do it.
So just to be clear, if there was a problem with the voter registration form, you got in touch, if you could, with the person who was trying to register to vote?
Yes, we communicate exactly with the voter. We send them a letter saying this is incomplete, this is not.
And I didn't mean to misspeak. I meant that there was a huge increase in voter registrations, and my understanding was that there was a certain percentage that got bounced out. That's not true?
Well,
I mean, how?
Well, I don't want to
give us a ballpark.
I can't do that right now because I don't have it. We don't track those. I know where they're located at. We're going to be doing a separate system for that one. We don't actually key them into our database because it's an incomplete voter registration form. But I will tell you, we follow up with every single one. If somebody transposed an address, let's say they transposed a number and it says, okay, that number doesn't exist.
Right.
And if there's a phone number, we'll call them because we know what happened. They did, especially if somebody moved. Oh, what's my address, you know, or I'm mailing it. So those little things. Or by accident, they wrote their birthday and they put the current year. Well, we know the current year is not the birthday, you know. But if they gave us a thing, so we put those under the callback. There's some things that we can handle by a quick phone call. We write it in green in the operating, and there's some that if they don't make the Prop 200, no proof of citizenship, no driver's license, then the law requires that we send them a letter in a new form saying you got to provide this to us.
And then what do you do with those voter registration forms that are no good?
We keep them.
You hold on to them?
We're required by law to hold on for 2 years.
2 years.
Okay, thank you all. I think we're going to invite them to help join me.
Thank you for all the questions. You know, I do have to thank everything. You know, I can't do this all on my own. I have a great administrative staff. I have a good staff. When I walk in the door, if I'm gone from Phoenix, I kiddingly will tell them, I said, don't worry, Mom's coming back. I say, I call myself on Mom, and they come back. But I do have a good staff, both on the reporting side and the division and on the voter side. And during elections, big elections, I can tell you, last year I drove my staff hard because in 12 months, we did 5 countywide elections. I mean, we were burned out. I was burned out, you know, and you know, because they are getting paid for their own time. Obviously, I'm not. Neither is my administrative staff. So we tried, you know, to give credit where credit's due. I cautioned them about they have their individual rights as citizens of voting in the process, their mindset. But you know, and even my intermittent employees. Don't talk politics, don't talk this, don't get initiatives, don't get involved in that one. Because especially with social media. I says, and I cautioned them, I said, don't put something on your Facebook app that will jeopardize anything, okay? People sometimes, you know, we all get angry. I have a Facebook page, it's dead, it's not. I have my office Facebook page. There's just, people put so much thing out there, and I'm sad to hear that people are disfriending people, family members and stuff, you know. I don't think this would have happened 20 years ago. When I first ran, there was no web pages, there was no internet. It was the old foot thing, reaching out to people, the one-on-one talk. So we live in a different world right now. I love my job. I love what I do. I like the challenges. I like the administrative. But I really do not like the politics. But thank you for having. Feel free if anybody has any questions. I'd be glad to attend.
Hang on.
I'll be around. And this is temporary. I don't know what I'll be like this afternoon. But anyway.